There have been so many mass shootings in this country, it's sadly hard to keep track of them. Here's what President Biden said about that today.
Just do something. For God's sake, do something. After Columbine, after Sandy Hook, after Charleston, after Orlando, after Las Vegas, after Parkland, nothing has been done. This time that can't be true. This time we must actually do something.
You know, it's very similar to what President Obama said almost 10 years ago when a gunman killed 26 people, 20 of them children at Sandy Hook Elementary School.
As a country, we have been through this too many times. Whether it's an elementary school in Newton or a shopping mall in Oregon or a temple in Wisconsin or a movie theater in Aurora or a street corner in Chicago, these neighborhoods are our neighborhoods and these children are our children. And we're going to have to come together and take meaningful action to prevent more tragedies like this, regardless of the politics.
Let's discuss now. CNN's senior political analysts, John Avlon and Ron Brownstein, and also political commentator Alice Stewart. They're all here to discuss this. Good evening. John, let's start with you. 2022, 2012, the message is the same. What do you think has happened in that decade, and then in the last few weeks that maybe changes things?
What's happened in the last decade is more death, more mass shootings, more mass murder, and nothing has changed because after Sandy Hook, there was a bipartisan bill mentioned to me. 54 senators voted for it, but it was filibustered, and people said if we can't get action on common sense gun safety reform after children, first graders are killed, we never will. So people basically gave up. But the death toll keeps rising. The mass shooting numbers are out of control. And I think there's regret at that inaction. And so I think there is a window where maybe you can get something modest bipartisan done in the Senate. That's the hope, and that's what President Biden tonight was speaking to. Specific things. That from red flag laws to not an assault weapons ban, although that would be ideal, but to maybe raising the minimum age to 21. Things that we can do, that we can agree on. That's not too much to ask.
Ron, you have been looking into this. Are the American people behind the president when it comes to gun reform?
Well, sure. I mean, you know, the dynamic has been the same for a long time. There is a majority in support of the key proposals that he laid out tonight, including an assault weapon ban over 60%, including a ban on high-capacity magazines over 60%, and as your previous guest noted, roughly 90% in support of universal background checks. And that consensus extends not only from Democrats and independents, as I've said before, if you look at the Pew polling, even Republicans who don't own guns, a majority of them agree and would support those positions. But the Republican gun owners are the one group that opposes all those ideas, and they have a veto in the Republican Party. It's easy to forget that in the 1990s, there were 38 House Republicans who voted for an assault weapon ban. There were 9 Senate Republicans. George W. Bush ran in 2000 and said he would sign an assault weapon ban extension if Congress passed it, even though he didn't do anything to do when they allowed it to expire. I think the question for Republicans is what has changed from a policy point of view since then? As John said, there have been more deaths, more mass shootings. Why were those policies acceptable then and they are unacceptable now? And the only reason is because of the shifting nature of the Republican coalition and their increased reliance on the most culturally conservative voters, and they have a veto over the party's views on guns.
So I'll ask Alice, what do you think? Is he right about that?
I think, look, what we're seeing across the country and even within the Republican Party, people are saying, as President Biden said, they've had enough. They've had enough of the violence. They've had enough of the shootings. And it's time now to hope for change. I am hopeful. I'm optimistic that we will see change. Look, Ron is the expert on the numbers, and he quoted a lot of numbers. I was fascinated by a poll I saw today, YouGov poll that polled people across the country. They view a lot of this as a mental health issue, not just a gun violence issue. So that is something that needs to be taken into consideration. President Biden touched on that. It cannot be just focusing on the guns. He mentioned several aspects. John just outlined many of them. Looking certainly at expanding the background check, looking at the mental health issue, looking at the safe
Alice,
storage aspects.
I don't think anyone is just saying just focus on the guns. I think that most people are saying it should be comprehensive. Every single person I've spoken to said it should be comprehensive. The only people who are saying it shouldn't be guns are the people who Ron mentioned, and that's
Actually, no.
Republicans
If you look, a lot of Republicans I'm speaking with say they're not being reached out to by Democrats. Lindsey Graham tweeting tonight after the president's speech saying that he stands and would be happy to sit down and vote on all of these proposals or have these conversations, but Democrats are not willing to find common ground on this. So look, I think there's three things that are going to come out of this as we try to seek meaningful, important, common sense reform. Three
wait,
things.
Alice, hasn't Mitch McConnell deputized John Cornyn and others to deal with Democrats on this? Why do Democrats have to reach out? Why can't Republicans reach out? I think this is a bigger issue. This is a bigger and more important issue for Republicans. I think that they face more scrutiny come November if they don't deal with this issue.
Well, look, everyone needs to put the partisanship aside and have these conversations. Three things are going to come out of this conversation. Progressives are not going to get everything they want, as Biden said. Republicans are not going to give up everything they want. And Democrats are not going to get anything unless they really bring both sides together and have these talks. We've heard Democrats talk about they're willing to put legislation out there for a vote without having a bipartisan input on this. We can't have that. We truly need bipartisanship to get something done. It needs to be comprehensive, but it needs to be bipartisan.
I want to play this because I think it's very important to get you guys to react to it. This is Republican Senator Chuck Grassley. He held a town hall in his home state of Iowa. That was yesterday. This video is from Iowa's starting line. It shows how he responded to a question on banning AR-15 style weapons. Watch.
Over 400 million guns in the United States, 15 million of them are AR-15s. So you're going to still have AR-15s even if you stop selling them right now.
No, you ban them.
The
You
answer
take
is
them.
not to do nothing.
You get rid of them.
Right. There are
You take
things
them.
that we
If
can
you take
do.
somebody with you,
Yes.
you confiscate them, and you fine them, or you put them in jail.
Yep.
Well, the answer to your question is a process answer. Whatever we do through the Cornyn Murphy cooperative effort to make schools safe and to do what you can with guns, that probably would not get 60 votes. And I'll say,
Quit filibustering it then.
There you go. And look, conservative, one of the most conservative. We reached out to Grassley's office, by the way, for a comment, but we haven't heard back. Constituents are clearly angry, John. Do you think this is going to have an impact on senators like Grassley? That's why I said this is a more dangerous thing for Republicans, I do believe, in this moment, come November, than it is for Democrats.
Well, I think the issue is that the parties are basically captive to their bases, particularly the Republican Party, as Ron was pointing out. But the fact that Chuck Grassley is getting that kind of pushback in Iowa,
Right.
folks are saying, look, you're just telling me we can't do anything?
Right.
You know, that's not the American way. You deal with difficult issues and you find common ground. And he's saying there's no way it's going to get 60. And that woman immediately said, well, then stop filibustering, which is the actual issue. So, you know, you got to have some faith in Cornyn and Murphy and Cassidy and Graham negotiating with these Democratic senators right now. Everyone's going to have to give a little. That's not a news flash. The question is whether they can get 10 Republicans to support it.
Right.
That's the standard. It is not mission impossible unless everyone is so cynical in Washington that they treat it that way. But people will listen to their constituents. That was the power, what you just heard against Chuck Grassley.
It's not just guns, but it's you cannot exclude the guns, right?
It's red flag issues are both.
It's comprehensive,
It's
yes.
both.
It's all of it. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. Thanks.